From the station putting local first, this is a KTSM 9 News special, Loretto Academy, a century in the making. Welcome to Loretto Academy, home of the Angels, and to more than 9 decades of history, which actually begins in Kentucky at a mother house more than 1,400 miles away.
Well, the Sisters of Loretto were founded in 1812 in Kentucky, and we're considered one of the first American-founded orders.
That's when the quest to move west began, first to Missouri, then New Mexico and California.
We came to El Paso in 1892, and we taught that was when El Paso was establishing Catholic schools. So we taught in all the Catholic schools, like St. Patrick's, St. Ignatius, Sacred Heart, schools in downtown area.
Its close proximity to the border, bringing students from the neighboring Mexican state of Chihuahua.
Mother Praxides got many requests by families from Mexico to build a school, a boarding school, like Loretto Academy. And so she responded to that desire.
Mother Praxides, the superior at the time, buying 19.5 acres of desert land in the Austin Terrace neighborhood in central El Paso.
And so we've always been welcoming to both cultures and actually to anybody in the region. It's been a very important part of our foundation.
And architecture. Famed architects Trost and Trost designing the women's boarding school, symbolizing open arms towards Mexico.
It represents the Sacred Heart, with the tower being his head and then the wings being his arms, welcoming everyone to our campus.
Doors officially opening for classes in 1923 to 186 students, 20 of whom were boarders.
In 1928 was the first time we had Mass in the chapel. That was completed. And then succeeding years, the rest of the school was finished. And so here we are today in 2019.
More than 200 years of history for the Sisters of Loretto and nearly 100 for the school. The right wing of Loretto Academy is known as El Convento, which is Spanish for the convent. As its name suggests, it used to be where the Sisters of Loretto lived. It now serves as a meeting space and offices for nonprofit organizations. The Order of the Sisters of Loretto was founded by Mary Rhodes, Anne Havern, and Christina Stewart. The three turned to Father Charles Nerings, the Belgian missionary priest in the Kentucky area, for help establishing the order, which was founded in 1812 with the original name, Friends of Mary at the Foot of the Cross. The religious order has gone from 1,100 sisters to now 160, living out their mission across cities not only in the U.S., but Europe, South America, and Africa. There are even Sisters of Loretto in Pakistan, which inspired a service learning project for the graduating class of 2012. The annual Nun Run 5K run is organized by seniors to raise money for the Loretto Pakistan mission. Since Loretto's foundation began in Kentucky, a group of girls are selected to visit the Mother House every year, which has a lengthy history of its own. The Mother House used to be known as St. Stephen's Farm, named after Father Stephen Baden, the first ordained priest in the United States. The original building still stands today. In 1853, before the Sisters of Loretto arrived in El Paso, 6 of them opened a Catholic school for girls, also known as Loretto Academy, in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In 1873, the construction of the school's chapel began, but the architect is said to have died before access to the choir loft was built. A staircase would have taken up too much room inside the chapel, so seeking guidance, the sisters prayed to St. Joseph.
We feel that he sent somebody to correct a stairwell to the choir of that chapel. And it's miraculous, the wood that was used, the techniques. Nobody in that area had any knowledge of where this person came, and he disappeared. And it still stands today.
Since the Sisters of Loretto believe they received direct assistance from St. Joseph, they named the Loretto Chapel in El Paso after him. In 1928, Mass was held for the first time inside the Loretto Chapel in El Paso. That's about 5 years after the boarding school first opened its doors. What you see now is exactly what the chapel looked like 91 years ago. It's been restored throughout the years to update lighting, sound, and ventilation since the school was built with no air ducts.
It's hard because we do have to stick with the integrity of the building, and I think our alums would be upset if we tried to change a lot within the building. It's really nice to come back and the school feels the same. You still have that same warm, welcome feeling.
As mentioned earlier, Loretto is a historic Trost and Trost building. With so many years in existence, traditions have inevitably developed, uniting generation after generation and becoming something students look forward to every year.
It's the tradition to send your daughter to Loretto, to have that same education, to have that sisterhood, and to be part of the Loretto Angel family.
A tradition of excellence is Loretto's slogan.
The most important tradition of Loretto is that it's definitely empowering to young women, you know, through an education, so that by the time we graduate, we're ready to go out into the world and do amazing things.
Faith, community, justice, and respect, its core values, a culture created and cultivated throughout the years.
By the time you're a freshman, when you come in, you're paired with a senior, and they're like your big sister, and so you're introduced into the sisterhood. Each
classification with its own color: pink for freshmen, purple for sophomores, green for juniors, and yellow for seniors.
There's kind of the most renowned Loretto tradition, and that's ring rose, and that's when the junior is presented with their class ring from a senior.
The juniors in return giving their senior big sister a rose as a farewell.
A big one, I think, is the senior retreat. You know, the girls go off to the Holy Cross Retreat Center and they spend some time together.
All culminating to Circle Drive, when seniors drive around the school's front circle 4 times after taking their last final, representing their 4 years at Loretto.
I think it's important. The girls here mean something, and we've had many alumni come back and talk about how when that Loretto ring is identified, they're part of a sisterhood, and they feel important about it, and they feel like it's a responsible thing to continue the legacy.
This year's graduating class had 95 students awarded $35.4 million in scholarships and grants from the different colleges they were accepted into. Part of the student body at Loretto does continue to come from Mexico. Remember, that originated from the boarding school program, which was running up until 1974. Students who commute from home in Ciudad Juarez to Loretto Academy in El Paso currently make up 30% of the student body population.
Coming up, in with the new, the method journalism students are using to spread news fast outside the walls of the academy. Then, 40 years strong, we take you inside the classroom of Loretto's longest tenured teacher and the nuts and bolts of one of the newest programs at Loretto, getting students in gear.
Some of the school's history has been documented through its own newspaper, a program led by a teacher whose passion for writing has been passed down to students like myself to become journalists.
The hardest part for me was learning how to follow every single rule that you have to do in journalism, and learning how to adapt to just turning in stories super fast.
An old school way of learning for a traditional medium of news.
We have to keep up a lot more on local news and how people see El Paso.
Covering the basics that never go out of style.
The journalism program at Loretto is an underground jewel. The girls work really hard. They get no financial support.
Meaning they're not just writing the stories, but looking for sponsors to keep their paper, the Prax, hot off the press.
It's named after Mother Praxedes, who was a trailblazer for Loretto, and the history is she was active in writing and so forth, and so the name Praxedian became associated with it, and just through the years it's gradually been shortened to the Prax.
Loretto Library records have bounded copies of the Prax dating back to the 60s and 70s, with a gap in the 80s.
In the mid-90s, I researched it and brought it back, and it's kind of been going on since probably the late 90s up to today.
Ms. Jerry-Ann Lockhart-Walker not only bringing back a piece of history.
Our online newspaper is top-notch, and the hard copy ones that they produce are equally as engaging.
but the beginning of a new era for Loretto journalism.
Initially, there was not a problem getting students involved in the class because we had a local newspaper. We had the El Paso Times that we could read, and gradually over time, the El Paso Times started to go by the wayside, and girls became more involved in technology, their phones, and not really keeping up on the news. So it's been a challenge for me to keep them engaged.
Evolving a printed prax into an online news source.
It has been a challenge for me. I teach the girls how to write. I've been fortunate enough to have girls who are technologically advanced, and they do all the technological stuff.
A class full of writers who make a monthly publication possible on just one computer.
Journalism is a safe haven for my students that may not really know what they want to do, and to give them a voice in writing was kind of my objective, and then to watch them take off with that and do amazing things was kind of my reward.
A lot has changed throughout the years, especially at this academy, and if anyone can vouch for that firsthand, it's a teacher who's been here for 4 of those decades.
40 years ago, there was a difference, definitely. Students are different, modern technology. Bonitas señoritas.
And if anyone would know, it's Señora Rosa Gonzalez, teaching Spanish at Loretto Academy since 1979, and now leading the foreign language department.
I want them to learn to love their language, their culture, and hopefully that's what they'll take from this class, not my fanaticism about the correct length of the uniform skirt.
Because anyone sitting in this class as a student knows no Spanish lesson is complete without a daily course of etiquette.
I feel to make a well-rounded woman that will go out into the world and be successful, I think it's a combination of education, knowledge, and manners, respect.
Leading by example.
My new gimmick is they all know how to say por favor whenever they ask for anything, and it's become a big joke. But now, and they let people, they say hello to people. I think students overall are more courteous than when we started the school year.
Nothing too fancy or out of the ordinary in her classroom. Books, desks, and a list of rules hanging from the wall. The old-fashioned style of teaching she's most familiar with.
My mother was a school teacher also, so she always instilled in us that the teacher is never wrong, and never to argue that the teacher is right. So my mother definitely was my big inspiration.
40 years down, a couple more to go.
I don't plan to quit. Everyone asks once in a while, are you retiring? Or they come with a gossip, I hear you're retiring. I said, no, not yet.
From one accomplishment to the next, Loretto's Robotics Club is showing the world that it's never too early to start. In fact, it's because of how early they did that they've been able to make it so far in so little time.
Robotics actually started 8 years ago at Loretto, and I was one of the founding members in elementary. So it started with building Lego robots, which is called FLL.
That Lego robot slowly progressing into a more than 100-pound metal robot.
This year we actually went to, I think it was 4 competitions. There was one here in El Paso, and we got the 2nd best ranking robot out of the El Paso region.
Going on to rank 2nd in Plano and qualifying for finals, taking home more than just a trophy.
I learned how to program, which is pretty cool since I want to be an engineer. It's something that I need to learn. And I also learned how to think outside the box, because for engineers what you hear is that they have a whole new way of thinking, and robotics is really helping with us because we have to problem solve.
Transitioning from a club to an actual class.
I'm actually very proud of how we're expanding because of robotics. We actually started a serial period computer science class, so we're allowing more girls to the opportunity to be into computer science and to program.
And breaking a stereotype.
Yes, girls can be into robotics. Yes, we can be do math as well.
Up next, a tour inside the home of the Angels, how the school has been preserved for decades and the new renovation students will walk into next school year. Plus, the major milestone students, faculty, and alumni are preparing for.
And joining us now is Loretto Academy's admissions coordinator, Lily Miranda. Loretto is actually led by Sister Buffy Bozen. She's the president. And the principal?
Homero Silva.
And so talk a little bit about what people see as soon as they walk in, what they're greeted by here at Loretto.
Well, as soon as they walk in, they open the door and they're greeted by the Virgin Mary, and that is very touching to a lot of our parents. They feel like they're being welcomed, and this is exactly what they have found, a home for themselves and for their daughters.
And this foyer is very inviting, very cozy. There's couches, there's tables. What do students use this area for?
Well, the students conjugate here before school, after school.
And everywhere you look, there seems to be wood everywhere. It's so beautiful. Is it actually the original wood?
It is the original wood, and the paintings are on the wood are also original.
We even see it here in the library.
As you can see, the students are here doing some research for a particular class.
Thousands of Loretto Angels have walked these hallways, myself included, and you can see some of them displayed on the walls here of the school.
And this is a very meaningful wall for us, as you can tell. The pictures on top are the students as they come in as freshmen. And then the lower one is their graduation pictures as they're leaving. It's leaving Loretto to go on to their college years.
And actually, I'm right here. 2012, that's when I graduated. And heading down to the hallway where the classrooms are on the first floor, we see that some classrooms are being renovated. This looks like it used to be the science lab.
It is a science lab which is being renovated, and they're going to have the classroom and a room for the chemicals to be stored.
Walking down the hallways, everything pretty much looks the same. The wood that we saw on the first floor remains downstairs on the second floor. This is mainly high school, right?
Correct, correct. This is the science section of our high school.
Well, this is what almost a century here in El Paso looks like, and hopefully Loretto will be around for many, many more years.
Welcome back home.
Thank you. It always feels nice to be back. We'll be right back after this. Now Loretto prepares to celebrate its centennial in 2023. That's just a few short years away from a major milestone for a school that's been producing a tradition of excellence. That does it for our half-hour special from Loretto Academy. With photojournalist Ruben Espinosa, I'm Estefania Seyffert. Let Loretto be Loretto forever.